Hello and welcome back to the program. My name is Michael Finney. Today I am joined by Alex Grin. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone. Most people online know me as Grin. I'm a founder of LBRY, which is a blockchain-based content protocol. It lets you publish content, specifically mostly videos, but really anything. Publish, watch, pay for them in a decentralized way. You could think of it like if Bitcoin and BitTorrent had a baby. That would be LBRY. And I'm also one of the organizers behind Vibecamp, it's like a Burning Man for autists from Twitter. We ran our first one last year, and we're doing a even bigger one this year.
Yeah, very cool. I know a handful of folks that were out at that event last year and have been raving about it. Let's rewind just a little bit and touch on Odyssey, which I use to mirror my video content and to engage with other esoteric releases that I find. There's a guy who does 3D printing on there that I really like. But tell me what the thinking is about why it's valuable and how it came to be.
Sure. So originally when we set out to make LBRY, our thinking was we want to make a better version of BitTorrent. Tons of people use BitTorrent. Even today, something like a quarter of upload traffic on any given day is BitTorrent. But it has a bunch of kind of problems with it. It's hard to build a business on it. It's hard to pay for content. There isn't even a single catalog of all the content that's available. You go to sketchy websites, hope you get the right thing. Maybe you don't know. So we figured some of the blockchain tools that were coming out at the time could fix basically all those issues. So that's the decentralized LBRY part. But most people, it's kind of hard to get them to switch over to that. So Odyssey is like a intermediate step. Odyssey is kind of like, if you think of LBRY as kind of like Bitcoin, Odyssey is kind of like Coinbase. It's a company that uses the protocol, but it's much easier to start using. It's less decentralized. So with Odyssey, it's very straightforward. It's just like YouTube. You make an account, you upload videos, all the content still gets published to the LBRY network, but you can do it all through your browser. You can do it in 5 minutes. You don't even need to know much about crypto or anything about crypto to use it.
Yeah, very cool. I think that simplifies the process. The media part, right? Being able to distribute your video there, being able to catalog your stuff there, very, very awesome. But I think the added bonus of it is that you can gate access to things and allow for purchasing, which, on YouTube, that's a little bit more difficult. And in terms of a lot of video on demand services, you have to either have a significant catalog or you need to have, a company that is kind of repping you in that way. Whereas with Odyssey, you don't, right? It's open for them.
Right. We want to give the people who use Odyssey as much control as possible. So if they want to post content for free, great. If they want to charge for it, great. On YouTube, right, the way that YouTube makes money is through ads, and you can do ads on Odyssey, or you could even give people a choice. Do you want to watch an ad? Do you want to pay a small amount of money? Do you potentially want to subscribe, do a subscription? Odyssey's kind of experimenting with all of those. But the underlying principle is we want the people who use it to have as much flexibility as possible.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I've got a documentary out. It is on a few different platforms, but it's not on as many as I want. And to be able to find distribution channels like that is a real help because, there's a huge videography scene or documentary scene or even underground, movie making scene that I think would benefit from having these platforms that aren't necessarily YouTube, which, it's fantastic to be able to put it there if that's, what you choose to do. But if you're trying to monetize it, and let's be honest, it costs a lot of money and effort to make films, having platforms that allow you to do that, I think is fantastic. So let me ask you this. where do you draw the line between some of the BitTorrent aspects that you were addressing, the Odyssey brand specifically, and the LBRY blockchain itself?
So the LBRY protocol has two big pieces to it. One is the blockchain piece and one is the BitTorrent piece. So when you publish something to LBRY, the blockchain piece acts as the catalog, right? You put an entry in that says, I published this thing, here's the name, here's what kind of thing it is. Is it a video? Is it a blog post? Who's the author? How long is it? All this metadata. And also essentially a hash to go find that content in the BitTorrent piece. And then the BitTorrent piece is where the actual content is stored. It's distributed on computers of all the people who run a LBRY client. So together the blockchain piece and the BitTorrent piece, that's the LBRY protocol. And then Odyssey is a web front end for that. It's a way of accessing that content on the web without downloading the whole client. So everything you publish to Odyssey in the back gets put on the LBRY network. But you can just open your browser and watch it. You can, send someone a link to it, and they can open their browser and watch it. You can embed it on your site. That's the relationship.
So let me ask you this: is it possible to spin up a third-party distribution site on top of the protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a few smaller sites doing that. Some that are mostly just a clone of Odyssey that's meant for video, but also there's one for news. There's one for like 3D printed things. The like 3D printed gun community is actually kind of big on Odyssey, so they have their own. I've made a blog that is just my channel's blog post. That it's basically built in Gatsby. It's like a static site generator, but it pulls the content from LBRY instead of from your file system. So yeah, you can, and that was part of the original idea. With YouTube, if you wanted to make your own YouTube, it's really hard. The data is all stuck in one place. You can't just go and download all of it. But with LBRY and with Odyssey, you can make your own Odyssey competitor if you wanted to.
Very cool. I know this is perhaps a little technical for some folks, but I do appreciate you getting into the weeds for us a little bit. So tell us, what is the value of these things, either philosophically or technologically?
Well, it's interesting. I think the philosophy and the technology kind of go hand in hand, right? The technology, they're tools to help you do something, to help you create the kind of world you want to see. And we believe that information wants to be free. We believe that you shouldn't, if there's someone you disagree with, the answer isn't, well, I'm going to turn it off and no one can listen to them. That's one of the big differences between us and someone like YouTube is that we are not interested in censoring people. We have to obey the laws. We're a U.S. company. We have to obey U.S. law. Sure. But we want a protocol that can be used for anyone, even people outside the U.S. that have different laws. So we want to make a system where, you are in control of the content. We're not telling you what to do with your content. You can do what you want. And we want to, at the same time, we don't want to be so idealistic that create a system people don't want to use. We want to be pragmatic. And so Odyssey is kind of that pragmatic side. It is pretty centralized. It does. Odyssey doesn't show all the content that's available. For example, like there's no porn on Odyssey. You can't find it there, even if there's porn on LBRY. And that's our decision about what we thought was best for Odyssey specifically.
Reasonable.
We want to give people both.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as a viewer, and this is an issue that I came across on other platforms where it's like, I don't want to drive traffic to, my work and then have it seated next to something that I think is questionable in terms of age bracketing or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to make anything that I think is too over the top or controversial or whatever. I like the stuff that I make. I think that I have themes and points that are valid, or maybe, from a different angle at times, but I'm certainly not trying to make them pornographic in any way, and I don't want them to be situated right next to something like that. And that's just me. So I do appreciate you making that effort.
Yeah, totally. It's again what I was saying. We want to give people the choice. We want people to be in control of what they see. Like I have kids, I want my kids to be able to use Odyssey, but I don't want them seeing porn, obviously. So I want to be in control of that. I think where we draw the line is when people want to make demands on others, what others are allowed and not allowed to see.
Right.
That's why we have this, layered approach where on the one hand, we show you one view of the network, but underneath, if you want to see a different view of the network, that's up to you.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way to go about things. People are going to make and distribute the media of their choice, and they should be allowed to do that, without any stipulations from me as an individual. Obviously, like if the laws are in place, then, they're going to have to worry about the consequences of that on their own. But that's, not really my, I don't want to be the arbiter of taste in that way. So let's move on in terms of culture and address how Vibecamp is birthed out of this line of thinking, or if it isn't. How do you see these things connecting or fitting together? Is there an overlap culturally between what you do with LBRY and Odyssey and the Vibecamp event?
There's some overlap. So Vibecamp kind of has a separate version. It's not. It's really not even that crypto heavy. It's primarily came from Twitter. It's a bunch of people who were hanging out on Twitter, especially since COVID started. But I think the community was formed before, and we call ourselves kind of tongue-in-cheek in group, right? Or Teapot, which is this part of Twitter, and especially during COVID, right? Everything was online, and then as COVID was kind of, I wouldn't say, I guess COVID wasn't ending, but like the people felt more comfortable going outside, hanging out with each other. There was a strong appetite for like, hey, let's get together. We've known each other online for so long. We've only interacted through this kind of restrictive, but like surprisingly powerful medium of Twitter. Some people have been doing calls with each other or visiting each other, but it was clear that people wanted to hang out together. And we were like, all right, well, let's not just talk about it. Let's actually do it. And so when we ran the event, we made the decision that we wanted it to be collaborative. We didn't want it to be like we were going to do everything. What we wanted to do is we would provide, the space, the food, housing, kind of like the basics. But everything that happens during Vibecamp is brought there by the people who come. And this community on Twitter is very like ideologically diverse. It's not, a lot of people are anonymous, so you don't even know who they are or what they're really like. And people have all sorts of different beliefs. And we wanted to make a space for all of that. So in that sense, it is very much like LBRY. We wanted there to be some of everything. If you went to Vibecamp, there would be people playing board games. And then just across the 5 minutes down, there would be a boxing match. And a little ways away is a dance party. And then there's a, Burning Man style tea house. And there's like talks on various intellectual topics. And there's all sorts of diversity all in the same place.
Where is it going to be held? How long is it going to go?
So this year it's going to be about halfway between Philly and Baltimore. It's going to be 4 nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 nights. And I guess it's 3.5 days. Yeah. And I mean, that's the official time, but the secret to running events is that they actually begin well before they begin. So Vibecamp started as soon as people found out the Vibecamp was happening. So in a sense, this upcoming Vibecamp is already happening. There are already people preparing to do talks or hang out with their friends or whatever they're going to wear now. So Vibecamp's already begun.
What was your favorite part of the inaugural event last year?
Some of it was this, like, the fact that so many people put so much energy into it that we didn't even ask them or tell them or pay them or anything like that. We didn't pay ourselves. It was very, like, everyone came out, everyone contributed in a lot of different ways, and so many people told me it was, best weekend of their life, which sounds kind of crazy, right? We're not professional event organizers. We've never done anything like this, but seeing like everyone find their thing, everyone having fun, I really enjoyed that.
What are you looking forward to this year at the event?
Even more of that. So I think when you go the first time, you don't quite know what to expect. And I mean, no one did, which kind of made our job easier. It set the expectations low, but people didn't realize it was going to be so bonding, so collaborative. And so for this year, everybody knows, or everybody who went to the first one, or everybody heard about it. So I think there's going to be even more of that, even more of showing up and, bringing something for the rest of the people there.
Yeah, sounds very cool. I think that, having an event like that on the other side of the country from, what people know of Burning Man, and perhaps maybe the way that it has evolved over the decades that it's been going on, allows for an alternative or even a competing perspective on putting an event like that together and allowing people to not have to travel as far as well.
Yeah, and it's a slightly cozier version. Burning Man's pretty harsh. You're in the middle of the desert. You don't have, there's nothing there. If you showed up on your own without maybe a camp that had done it before, if you didn't specifically know what to do, it would be rough. Whereas for Vibecamp, you'll have a place to sleep, you'll have food to eat. There's a shuttle going from the airport or from Philly to bring you there. So it's a little bit more accessible to people who don't have that experience. But the vibe is very similar in the collaborative piece of it. We actually had one of the guys who was at the very first Burning Man also came to Vibecamp last year, and I thought that was a special kind of continuity.
Wow. Yeah, I would say so. That is interesting. Are there any parts of these projects that we haven't addressed that you feel need to be addressed so they don't get overlooked?
We talked about the community aspect and how that was important to me. I think that's missing in a lot of these, a lot of things, kind of like Odyssey or big, websites that people use every day. To me, what made YouTube special in the early days of YouTube was this community of it, and same on Twitter. I think people who set out to build websites or events or, in the crypto space, there's so many people trying to start DAOs, and they're all kind of looking to create community in a very artificial way, I think. The community should come first or should be a core part of it. That's something that people tend to overlook.
I agree. Yeah, it kind of has to bubble up instead of trickle down. I think it's there's a saying somebody had used recently, and feel free if you've heard it before, but we look at trends starting bottoms up and fads kind of being distributed top down. And if it's a fad, then it might have an agenda, or it might also have some other goals in mind, a trajectory already in place. Whereas a trend that comes grassroots in terms of its establishment is a little more organic and maybe a little more solid and can integrate things a little more holistically.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of hear this in the startup world as well, right? Lots of people talk about building a product for yourself that you yourself love. And so I think that comes from that community part, right? If you make something for yourself and then you make something for your friends who there's a real community there. It's not artificial. It's not, I'm going to make a lot of money, so I'm going to try and get everyone interested in this thing. It's people already want this thing, and I'm going to help create it and meet their needs.
Definitely agree. Well, Alex, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time to talk today and tell us a little bit about LBRY and Odyssey and Vibecamp and the rest.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.